Hi everyone, this is Olivia, and I am making this video to talk to you guys about how to read a council meeting agenda and what each specific item entails. So when you're in the meetings, you have a better understanding of where we are and what's going on, why some items get voted on, some don't. So let's jump right into it. All right, so first we have the call to order. So at 6 o'clock, the mayor um, tells everyone to be quiet and sit down. And then he calls the meeting to order. So they've officially begun. The minutes, which is basically um, every detail that they went over and talked about, gets wrote down by their secretary, or their clerk of council, as she's called, and it gets written down. I'll talk more about that in the minutes section. So this is what a normal city council meeting agenda looks like. The text is usually a lot smaller, but this is what we're working with today. So after the call to order, the clerk of council takes the roll call, and she just basically takes the roll, and if someone's not here, she gives an explanation, and the council votes to excuse that person from the duty. So if like someone has a family emergency and they're not able to make it, that gets acknowledged, and the council votes to accept the excuse essentially. And then everybody, including those watching, do the Pledge of Allegiance. And then after that, there's a moment of silence. That's the part I always forget. Um, so after you say the pledge, you stay standing, and there's a moment of silence. And then the mayor says, "Okay, you can sit." So for the minutes, which is kind of the um, more detailed summary of a council meeting, the minutes get approved from the previous meeting, and the council votes on whether the minutes are approved by just basically saying if they're not right, then they speak up and say, hey, like for example, you spelled my name wrong on the last minutes, please make that correction. So they approve that the minutes are right, accurate stuff. All right, so pre-scheduled business is business that is not an ordinance or regulation. So stuff that does not get voted on, it's usually a presentation of milestones or proclamation of some sort of um, like town event or recognition of a holiday. So, for example, this past one on June 2nd, we had both. So, during the proclamation, um, that's usually an event that gets acknowledged by the mayor and council, and they usually do um, some sort of acknowledgement on social media. Sometimes they go as far as having events in town to um, to celebrate that, or educate people on why they're having a proclamation to begin with. So, for example, May, they had a proclamation on Motorcycle Awareness Month, and I think they were giving out like bumper stickers and making posts on social media just to make people aware of um, being safe around motorcyclists. Um, and so this one was for Pride Month, and usually there's a representative that accepts the proclamation. They like will get a certificate on behalf of those that presented that proclamation. And then the presentation of the milestones. So they like to acknowledge the people that have worked for the city for a specific amount of time. So if you've been working for the city for a year, you get acknowledged at the city council meetings, and sometimes you get like a certificate or a plaque. This one was specifically for 2 firefighters that had served for 25 years. So that was nice. And usually people are acknowledged at city council. There's a large turnout for the meeting to give those people their support. So that's nice. And so when you see old business, that means it's already had a reading. So the law states that council has to read something for a minimum of 3 times. It can be voted against so that they would only have to read it 2 times. If council deems it necessary or fair, they want to get a vote started on the second reading. But you always have to have the first reading of an ordinance and then a vote on the second hearing, or a vote on the third hearing, depending on if they want time. Usually, council votes to only do 2 hearings because sometimes it's just kind of a boring item that they feel like it's not as controversial in the city. So, and sometimes people just like want to get it over with. That's my best explanation. So, back to my original point, if it's old business, that means that it's already gotten the first hearing. So the 2 old businesses that were talked about on June 2nd, 2025, were the sale of parcels to FTC, which is the Fairborn Development Corporation, and the issuance of bonds in anticipation, or the allowance of providing for the allowance of issuance and sale of notes for anticipation of issuance of bonds for the city's roadway system, specifically Spangler. That one's a little bit of a deep dive, but so those 2 that were voted on, they were voted for unanimously, by the way, last night. And so if you have new business, that is business that's getting its first reading. So for the ordinances, they will decide on those the next meeting or the meeting after, depending on what they want to do. And after each hearing, so for the ordinances, the public gets to come in to speak around the time they're done presenting their side and what they've worked on. There's usually presentations for each one of these items. So the public gets to comment on the first hearing, like after the ordinance has been read, they get to comment after that, and they also get to comment before the council votes on the second hearing and the third hearing. So, but for resolutions, so there was an ordinance that was read for the first time, they're going to have their second hearing the next time. For the resolutions, they don't need 3. So that's the difference between ordinance and resolution. A resolution is just a change to the city's law book, I think. I don't know what the right term for it, just a code, city code. And those don't have to, those the public doesn't comment on. They just kind of vote for it. It's usually like a standard maintenance thing that they have to do, like we change the way we give these people their boots, their equipment for construction work. We're giving them money for the boots instead of paying for boots and giving it to them. So that's something that was on there a couple weeks ago. So they just want to make sure we know what we're spending our tax money on. They know what they're spending their money on. They know what's been going on in each of these departments and what some of these things by law they have to get approval for. So those usually are the resolutions. The probably the most boring section in my opinion, but oh well. And then the fun part is the citizens' comments. So they asked, does anyone have any comments? And these can be general comments. They don't have to pertain to the ordinances. The ones after the ordinance readings stuck in here or stuck in here. Actually, I don't think if it's read for the first time you get to talk, but if it's read for the second time you get to talk. So if you didn't get a chance to speak on what you wanted to speak about, if it didn't pertain to anything talked that night, then you can speak to the council about any concerns you may have, just anything really. They're not required to like answer your questions back. I've seen it where they have, if it's a reasonable, request or question. But yeah. And then also sometimes they'll answer the questions in the council comments after the city manager speaks. So hopefully, we get our questions answered then. There are other ways, less formal ways of getting our comments out there and our concerns out there, our questions. The mayor recently did a social media post where he answered questions that were submitted to the Ask the Mayor forum. I'll link that in the description if anyone wants to talk to the mayor or ask questions for him to answer every week. And so that's that. City manager comments. So the city manager is kind of like each department's boss, like each department head's boss. So we have like the finance department, the engineering department, the the police department. Like they all essentially work for the city manager, and the city manager helps those departments coordinate together and communicates what is done, what projects they're working on, like big projects to the city. So, like if we were to get a new business in Fairborn, he would usually handle all of that and handle all the collaboration that has to go into that and communicate it to the council. And so he makes his updates and comments after the citizens speak, and then the council gets to speak on, and they usually speak about just how the meeting went, where they want things to go in the future. They answer questions that might have not gone answered in the citizens' comments. They talked about the week and what they did, just stuff that they think the city should know since it's all recorded. And then there's the adjournment, so they have to vote to adjourn the meeting, and that takes place and it's basically done. Sometimes they go into executive session, and you'll see that on the agenda, which basically means that they have something to discuss in private, usually with like lawyers, that's not ready to be disclosed to the public. But they didn't have one last night. So and usually they put future council meeting dates at the bottom of this, but this one doesn't have it. It's usually on the city's calendar though. You go to Fairborn, and then you go down to calendar. Everything's listed. You can view the full calendar. Everything's listed. Usually the city council meetings are the first and third Mondays of every month. And they also have a work session that goes on at 5 p.m. before the 6 p.m. meeting. So that is basically what the agenda looks like. If you guys have any requests or questions, you could always leave them in the comments below, and I'll be happy to answer whatever you need to know. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye.